Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 114 of A Yank on the Footy. I'm Craig Wessels, coming to you from Sandusky, Ohio, and I am so thrilled that you are listening. Today's club of the episode is the Winnicott Eagles. The Eagles were founded in 1976 and were previously known as the East Fremantle Amateur Football Club. They play their home games at the Winnicott Reserve on the corner of Winnicott and Bawden Streets in Willagee. I believe it's Willagee. About 15 kilometers south of the Central Business District in Perth. And a big congratulations to Reese Doig and Riley Bourne for their district awards this year with the club. And Eagles, I hope you have a fantastic 2022 going forward here. Now, this episode, I got the opportunity to sit down with a gentleman that, quite frankly, has what might be the most unique job I have ever heard of. And this is a gentleman who I was put in touch with by Darren Green, who helps to run the RVA Lions out of Richmond, Virginia. And I was just going through Richmond last week, in fact, 2 days ago, as a matter of fact, as I was coming home from visiting my son in Virginia. And I must say I truly enjoyed the bumper-to-bumper traffic that I was in for about 4 hours as I was heading back from my Thanksgiving break. But we're going to get into my discussion with Jeff Grubb here in just a moment. But before I do that, I wanted to take a moment and pay tribute to a fine actor who passed away yesterday, the 29th of November, after a lengthy battle with lung cancer. And I've been seeing the tributes pouring in for him on Twitter. And this is a gentleman by the name of David Gulpilil. And he was a tremendous performer. Dozens and dozens of acting roles to his credit. His career spanned more than a half century, starting with his early performance in a film called Walkabout. Now, most Americans, and I'm going to apologize right now, the first time most Americans saw this gentleman was in the film Crocodile Dundee. And that was probably the first time that I had seen him as well. But I'd also seen him in a couple of other performances that were absolutely compelling. That would be the film Goldstone, which was a precursor to the series Mystery Road that Aaron Peterson performs in, where he plays Jay Swan. I have found that series absolutely riveting to watch. And in many ways, to me, if you're a television fan here in the United States, it is an awful lot like the HBO series True Detective, because it peels back layers of an onion to dig into what society is like in the northern part of Western Australia. And it's just a fascinating look at that. So that's where one of the most recent spots that I had seen Mr. Gulpilil perform. But then just a couple of weeks ago, as a matter of fact, I was looking for a film to watch on HBO Max, and I ran across a film from the mid-'70s called The Last Wave. And he played in that film, he played a very troubled character by the name of Chris Lee in this psychological thriller. This was a film that had Richard Chamberlain in it, and was just a spellbinding performance on his part. So I tip my cap and I say, Valet, David Gulpilil, Valet, sir. You will be missed. You are an icon in Australian film. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am thrilled to welcome my guest today. In fact, this is my first in-person interview that I've had the pleasure of conducting for the podcast. My guest is a commander in the United States Navy and has spent about a decade, or actually a couple decades, playing footy throughout the USAFL. I would like to welcome Commander Jeff Grubb to the podcast. Commander, thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much.
This is a great thrill. You know, I've been in Virginia here visiting my son for a couple days, and we've been able to make this connection. So it's been something I've been looking forward to doing, to talking to you about the game as another player who's involved with the game, but not necessarily somebody who is like coordinating the team. You know, because I've talked to a lot of people who are like the senior coaches and overseeing the whole club. So it's gonna be great to get some of your perspective. So a little background about yourself. You're somebody who is from Alaska, correct?
That's correct. I grew up in Juneau.
Grew up in Juneau, and it's a beautiful area there. We were there back in 2015, and I remember touring around town and was amazed that as the capital, it's not as big a city as you might think.
Yeah, it's at the time, so in the 1980s, 1990s, it was about 30,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
As I understand it, it's still about 30,000 people.
Okay.
And it's not connected by road to anywhere. So on the one hand, you've got a town of 30,000 people. On the other hand, it's both the regional hub. So we had more sort of small-scale amenities that you would sort of expect with a larger community, just simply because if you were from the surrounding villages or small towns, you had to come to Juneau to do things. So
had it become kind of the touristy area at that point in time with the cruises when you were growing up, or is that?
Yeah, certainly. The summer in Juneau is, it's tourist season.
Mm-hmm.
We service the cruise ships.
Right. Yeah, it was beautiful there, and I really enjoyed the time there. And I believe there was like a little small village that had been recreated. It was off on one corner of town, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was there. It might have been Ketchikan, though. That was.
That sounds a little bit more like Ketchikan.
Okay.
Many of the towns there in southeast Alaska that do those kinds of things.
So you've got a background in psychology. In fact, you have your Ph.D. in psychology, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
And that's where you kind of caught the bug with footy when you were working on your graduate work in Colorado, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So I went to the University of Denver to study cognitive neuroscience. And when I was there, I was been playing rugby.
Okay.
And the rugby club there at the University of Denver, at the time, they weren't particularly well organized. And also, frankly, I'm not built to play rugby. So first year that I was there, I just got crushed.
Mm-hmm.
Broke a finger, broke a nose, separated both shoulders.
Both of those were your own that you broke?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Those were all on my side. I was like, well, I got to do something else because, one, I'm getting hurt an awful lot, and two, the team just wasn't much of a team. They were a drinking club who might play rugby occasionally.
Okay.
I had, when I was an undergraduate, I'd done junior year abroad in Japan. And so I was over there living in a foreign student's dorm. One of the other students there was from Adelaide.
Okay.
And she was attractive. So anything that she was interested in, I was fascinated by.
You were obviously a smart man.
Well, exactly so. At the time, if you're from the City of Churches, and you are representing the City of Churches to the rest of the world in this little university in Japan, you represent Tony Madra and the Crows.
Mm-hmm.
And so she sort of planted the seed. So, I'm there a few years later in Denver. And it was like, what non-rugby thing am I going to do?
Uh-huh.
And I looked up, and the Denver Bulldogs had started up. They were going for about 2 years.
Okay.
And so I went out. It was actually the weekend that I was taking comps, the comprehensive exams. August of 1999, went out for footy.
Wow. So you've been playing this for 22 years now.
Yeah.
On and off. You've had a couple spots where maybe you haven't been able to as you've moved around the country.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay,
yeah.
So you played with Denver for how long? Were you close to being finished with all of your graduate work at that time?
No, so in 1999 I took comps and then PhDs being PhDs. I didn't actually finish up until 2004.
Okay.
So I played for Denver with the exception of I guess it was the 2002 season. I played maybe one game for them. I played for him for a couple of years there.
So when you first started playing, what was your impression of the game itself as, if you'd say compared to rugby?
It had at the time certainly a reputation of being very brutal. In the 1980s with ESPN,
mm-hmm.
They had played up the hard aspect of footy.
Right.
It wasn't, compared to rugby, it wasn't as, I'll say, orthopedically brutal. You still had the big hits, you still had big bumps, so it wasn't it wasn't touch football by any stretch of the imagination.
Mm-hmm.
But it was more, let's say, aerobically intense than orthopedically intense. And there are certain skills in footy, particularly on the kicking side, that don't natively come to Americans. When we punt a ball, we punt so that it goes long distance, very high. The whole idea is to turn it into a hospital pass to the guy that's on the receiving end because he's on the other team.
Yes.
And so in footy, for the most part, that is completely opposite. So learning how to drop kick a ball and have it go low and hit a guy who is on your own team.
Right.
That was something that was hard to work on, and it's something that you see a lot of Americans, as they're running down the field with the ball, have to think about it before they go. The handball, rugby, even gridiron football, you toss the ball.
Right.
And so the first time out, you get a tackler on you, you've got a person that's close to you that can get the ball away to, inevitably you throw the ball. And so the learning to think through, okay, it's a hand pass, you've got to strike the ball. That took some. So there was a skill element to it, and there was an aerobic element to it. But then the other thing, particularly that Denver at the time had, and I think still has, is that they had sort of a core of Aussies who brought this club spirit. And so, we're there, we're going to sing a club song at the end of the game. And it seems ridiculous, but you've got all of these crazy Aussies there doing it, so you get in with that.
Right.
We're going to go out on a pub crawl. And so the guys get together and we do this pub crawl. So they started talking about mateship. So on the one hand, there's this, it's a great athletic thing. It's a great sport to be involved with. But with good clubs, it also comes with this cross-cultural experience and with a sense of community and camaraderie.
And I was going to ask about the camaraderie, and that's something that you probably see translating even into your military career, where you have people who, you're working alongside, and you're being brought together from disparate different places, but you've come together to some sort of a cohesive unit.
Absolutely, and in particular, although I'm not a line aviator, I work heavily with the aviation community, and so they talk about squadron cultures,
right.
And guys hanging out in the ready room, and being tight with your squadron mates. Very similar sort of idea here.
Yeah.
They're a team doing a job, but they're also a team hanging out.
Right. Yeah.
All naval aviation references Top Gun at this point, but there is an element of truth to that.
Well, I worked in my squadron's operations department, so I was at sea. My workspace was the ready room, right. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean I heard things that the other enlisted people in my squadron had no privy to. They didn't know about it. So, and a lot of it I kept hush hush. And some of the acquisition of the nicknames for the different people. I was just telling my son about one of them, which I'll tell you off air because I don't want to.
Roger.
It was a really good nickname.
Yeah. Well, and so the funny thing about it, like again with the dogs. So my name is Jeff Grubb. If you go out and you talk to people who were with the dogs at the time, and you say, "Hey, do you know Jeff?" They probably aren't going to recognize that. If you say, "Hey, Grubby," they go, "Oh yeah, it's Grubby." And because I played in a couple of places around the country over the years, I'm kind of known as Grubby.
And I was told to ask about your nickname. Darren Green suggested that I ask about the origins of your nickname.
Oh yeah, well no, so mine's not a truly cool nickname in that it's a play off of my name. My last name is Grubb. But yeah, for a time there with the Bulldogs, we had a guy named Phil, and then he and I were playing Ruck Rover combination, and so we had Grubby and Filthy in the middle.
Okay, that's well, and the way he described it in terms of asking you, that makes complete sense then, because he'd said that there was kind of a connection between you and one other player then.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. So you were with Denver for a while, and you moved on as now.
Right.
Were you attached to the Navy while you were working your PhD, or did you enter the Navy after that?
No, I'm one of those silly guys who went all the way through undergrad and graduate school before joining the Navy.
Okay.
So graduated from DU in 2004. At that point, I came into the Navy, was direct commissioned. So that summer, ended up going to Newport for Officer Indoctrination School and then Air Medical Officer School down the road that way. When I did that, obviously going through that training for a year and a half, closer to 2 years, wasn't in a position where I was going to be able to play, and really wasn't in a place where there was a team. Pensacola is pretty far away from, at the time, there really wasn't a team there.
Right.
So I went through that, made my first assignment, was at Patuxent River Naval Air Station, which is in southern Maryland, which is, it's about an hour and a half drive south of Washington, D.C.
That's with no traffic, right?
That's with no traffic.
8 days with traffic.
Precisely so. So if, for example, somebody were playing footy on the National Mall at like 9 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, and you're silly because you're in the military and you get up early anyway, well, you can make that drive in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Assuming that the cops aren't
pull
out
you
with
over, yes.
With the whole deal.
Yes.
So I was maybe there for 6 months to a year, and got the hankering to play footy again. It was, it's a great way to let off steam. Again, it's a great way to have a sense of community, and one that is not tied to the job. So went up and played with Baltimore Washington Eagles.
Okay.
I probably did that for about a year. Difficulty is that an hour and a half drive.
Right.
Every Saturday morning. That's hard to sustain.
Which, and you're kind of doing that again, are you not?
Yeah,
with you playing with the RVA Lions.
Exactly so. So with Richmond, and part of what happened there was that in my various tours, I've spent an awful lot of time going back and forth between the Mid-Atlantic region and Florida, and so I played off and on for a couple of iterations of a team that was in Tampa. And most recently was actually assigned down at SOCOM in Tampa. And so that was right when that team had gone, they had left the USAFL, they had started playing AFL X style footy locally.
Okay, like on a soccer-sized field, that sort of thing?
Yeah, exactly so. And I went out after about 6 years laying off of footy, and it was like, wow, I really needed this. I didn't appreciate just how much I got out of playing footy, being with the team, that kind of outlet. Well, when I got orders to come back up here to Norfolk, Darren Green had started the RVA Lions in the interim. And it was like, yeah, that's an hour and a half drive, but that experience with the Tampa Bay Tiger Sharks now, it was like, yeah, I have to do that. That's just something that makes my life a lot better.
Now, do you have anybody in the area here in Norfolk that comes with you to Richmond to play, or are you flying solo?
So right now I'm flying solo.
Okay.
We have started a Facebook group, the Hampton Roads Aussie Rules Football. We've got a number of people who are interested in it, and also just talking around work. There are a couple of folks that are interested, but thus far right now it's just me that's making the drive.
I've been trying to talk my son into it, but
exactly.
Yeah, it's because he's stationed here, and it's been so far it's fallen on deaf ears. He's much more into basketball, so he plays a lot of he ran cross country and was a baseball player, but he plays basketball now, so that's kind of his thing.
Yeah, well, and understandably, it's easier to get together a basketball team.
Well, that's true. Yes, and but I mean, it is a hike, and I'm trying to recall. I think when I was talking with Darren before, he mentioned that, I don't know why, and I could be completely wrong on this, but I seem to be like you weren't always driving to get there, and maybe I'm wrong on that.
No, that's correct. So I'm a private pilot. I
Okay.
own an airplane, and so it's one of those things where it's like, well, maybe I can fly up to one of these airports in Richmond and either get a cheap Uber or get somebody who's driving along the way. And I've done that twice.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is that because the Lions, for their Saturday practice, they play right in front of the Carillon in Richmond. And so that's pretty far out from the Hanover Airport and the Chesterfield Airport, and they play on Sundays. So trying to get an Uber from the Hanover Airport on a Sunday morning is nigh on impossible. And to get somebody who's coming in from that direction. We actually do have people that are coming in from Fredericksburg.
Okay.
And Darren's come and picked me up once.
Okay.
That's more that gives me an excuse to get flying in at the same time.
Well, that makes sense. But has it ended up where you're looking at your watch and going, this trip that I'm saving time on is actually taking me an extra hour and 15 minutes waiting on a ride or that sort of thing?
Well, yeah. So the first time that I did it, between driving to my local airport where the plane is, doing the pre-flight, taking off and getting to Hanover, I was about 30 minutes ahead of schedule. Okay. And then I waited 45 minutes for an Uber. So okay. Yeah.
And just in this area, I would have to imagine that the skies are a little crowded here because we're talking, we're right near the actual Norfolk Airport, and not too far away from Oceana and the air station up at the Norfolk base.
Yeah, and then on top of it, you've got 3 general aviation untowered airports. I'm at one of those. So yeah, there's an awful lot of air traffic down here. Saturday morning, Sunday morning, not as much, but fundamentally, we've got 2 different naval air stations. We've got Langley Air Force Base across the way. So
well, that's true too. I forgot about that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are an awful lot of people who like airplanes in this area, and they own airplanes and they fly airplanes.
So what are, you've played on several different clubs, throughout a couple of decades. What are some of your greatest memories playing the game? What are some of the things that you look back on fondly?
So just from a luck out perspective, I started playing with Denver. Although I came out in 1999, really the first full season I played with them was 2000. And that year they won their first national championship. So I went from, a complete novice at footy to scoring a medallion at the end of the year.
Fantastic.
So did that, playing with them again in 2003 when we won the national championship at that point. That was a lot of fun. The past year, like 2 years ago, 2019 thereabouts, with the Tampa Bay Tiger Sharks, getting that footy club going from they were calling it Major League Footy at the time, back into the USAFL with that group of guys. They're not as young as a lot of the footy clubs that I've played with, frankly, but like a really solid group of guys, and it was just a lot of fun to be around that group and get back into footy. And so, it's my Denver experience was definitely this is an athletic, we've gone out, we've won the thing. My experience with Tampa Bay was, this is a really solid group of people. And we're out. We've got kid-sized footies, and we're playing footy on the beach. It was
cool.
A good time.
Very cool. Very cool. I got to see my first games in person back in August. I went down to a regional tournament in Cincinnati, and there were there were 4 different clubs that were there, I think, or different parts of 4 clubs. Indianapolis had some people there, and Nashville, and then Columbus and Cincinnati as well. But it was a lot of fun. I don't know if you've ever met Wayne Kraska before. Yeah, I spent the afternoon sitting and, talking with Wayne, and I had a lot of interesting insight. I wish I would have recorded that. I mean, I had all the equipment with me, but I just got talking to him, and I was done. I was like, I didn't record a single moment of this. And I think that maybe he his views on some things may be a little divergent from some of the other folks that are part of the hierarchy of the USAFL.
Right.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just different trains of thought on things. So, where would you like to see this game here in the States over the next 5 to 10 years?
So, from a selfish perspective, I would like to have more local venues to be able to play footy,
Mm-hmm.
and that's part of what we're trying to do here in Virginia. So obviously there's a pretty good core in Northern Virginia with the Washington team now.
Mm-hmm.
Darren's trying to get a team that is based out of Richmond, but fundamentally we've got people that are driving in from Fredericksburg, Hampton Roads. If it were possible to put together what they call a metro side from the Hampton Roads area, and then team together with Richmond as sort of our USAFL side.
Right.
Just to have a place where people from different areas can get into the game, and not have to travel. These USAFL tournaments, they're great, but fundamentally not everybody is going to be able to go to Philadelphia on the weekend,
Mm-hmm.
or go to
Right,
Atlanta
right.
on the weekend.
Yes.
So to be able to have more of a base so that we can play, just be able to play more often.
Yeah, and that would be if you had because you've got the DC group, you got the RVA group, and those are really there isn't anything in North Carolina, if I'm not mistaken.
No, the Raleigh, the Cats.
Okay. Okay.
So they've got the Tigers team in North Carolina, and they, as with many teams, they fluctuate in strength.
Mm-hmm.
The DC team, when I played for the Eagles, it was the Baltimore Washington Eagles,
Right.
and that has since split. So they've got a DC Eagles and Baltimore
Dockers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when we do Mid Atlantic things,
Mm-hmm.
we've got that sweep from North Carolina up to Philadelphia, sometimes New York.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay. So we're going to go back to Japan and the young lady from Adelaide for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a Crows supporter to this day?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, this year, last year, a little difficult to admit that, but yes.
You know what? 2 years ago, their record was not great. Okay.
Right.
But they played, I watch just about every game every week because
Right.
that's just where I am in my life right now. They were a lot like North Melbourne this past year. Nobody really wanted to play them because they were going to play you hard. They may not beat you,
Right.
but you're going to know that you were competing in a pretty hard-fought contest.
Yeah, no, I have to say that the Crows, it was fun to watch them.
Mm-hmm.
And it, for as poor as their end record ended up being, it wasn't an abysmal put your bag over your head kind of thing.
Yes,
So,
I mean I've been a Cleveland Browns fan my whole life, so
well, yeah, exactly. So,
I have a ready supply of bags with the eye holes cut in them.
right.
That's just my Tuesday bag. I'll put that one on now. So, yeah. And you said you've not been to Australia before. Is that something that is on your bucket list of getting there someday to go?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to get out there. Haven't had the opportunity with work
Mm-hmm.
and family. So next year's going to be my 30th high school reunion.
Okay.
So I'm going to Juneau for
There you go.
for next summer. Yeah, that's one of those things that I would like to do.
Okay. Now, do you have kids?
I do.
Okay.
I've got a son.
Okay. Now, has he been to Juneau before?
He has not.
Okay.
So he's 8.
Okay.
And the last time that I was there was 10 years ago. So.
Okay. Okay. So you're looking forward to. I'm assuming he's at least making the trek to the reunion, but.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
No, and it's the opportunity to show him that this is this crazy place where I grew up, and Yeah.
And you still have family there today?
So my sister's moving back.
Okay.
And so part of what we're going to do is we're going to help her get moved into her house while she's there.
Okay. Terrific. Terrific. It's, as I mentioned before, it's a beautiful place. I had a friend of mine when I was in college, who was studying to be a teacher as well, that he moved to Alaska, and he's teaching somewhere out in the mainland part of Alaska.
Right.
He's been teaching in a small community there for 25 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been and he absolutely loves it up there.
No, it's folks who go there. You either get the person that moves up and then can't wait to get out of there and have gone within a year, or you get the person that bought a round trip ticket to help somebody move. And
right.
That was 20 years ago, and they still haven't come back.
Yeah, and they've cashed the ticket back in. Yeah, I've got a gentleman who is in Anchorage that I served with in the squadron I was in, who is had worked in talk radio up there for a long time until that station changed formats. But he was an ordnanceman in the squadron I was in. I still keep in touch with him. Mm-hmm. So a couple of questions about you away from the from footy. Mm-hmm. You said you can't discuss a whole heck of a lot, but as we were talking before we started recording, flight surgeons are kind of there to make sure that the physical being of the aviators are good enough to or healthy enough to go fly and that sort of thing. But you take a different approach with your job. Is there anything that you can tell us about that?
Yeah, so I am a naval aerospace experimental psychologist, which usually makes people cringe in terror and try to run for the door. But in reality, we don't have any clinical quals. We're also not a particularly large community. We've had AEPs since 1941, I guess is when we say the original guy was in. I am number 124.
Since 1941?
Yeah, so we'll put a caveat around that in that I am the 124th winged AEP. They didn't start winging them and therefore numbering them until much later.
Okay.
But really there have been maybe 250, 300 of us. We specialize in human systems integration. Where people will most commonly run into us is when they're taking the selection test to become a pilot or a naval flight officer. We're the people who develop and administer the ASTB. But we also do human factors engineering, so cockpit design, cockpit analysis. Okay. I'm currently at the Naval Safety Center, so I do mishap analysis and investigation, those sorts of things.
Okay, that's very interesting. Now, do you get to do any flying in any of the current aircraft yourself?
Yeah, so as an air medical officer, I'm on flight status, which means that I have I draw flight pay. In order to draw that flight pay, it's conditional on me actually flying. Okay. So we joke about sitting out at the end of the runway with our thumb in the air, looking for trying to thumb a ride. Ordinarily, like a flight surgeon will be attached to a squadron or wing, and they will typically fly with their guys, with their units. Because I am not attached to a specific squadron, I've got that one additional hurdle to go through where I've got to go out and go, hey, you don't know me from
right
from anybody, but I'd really like to go flying with you guys. So.
Here's my ID.
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So, are you able to talk about what's been the most exciting aircraft that you've been in?
So in terms of actually flying, this will sound stupid, but the T-39 back in the day. So it's you can see them on the civilian market. They're called a Sabreliner. It's like a business jet. Mm-hmm. It was the jet that they did NFO training. Again, Top Gun, Maverick, Pilot, Goose, NFO. Yes. So if you're going to train the next Goose, they would put them in this T-39, this business jet. You've got the student pilot was up in the right front seat. The student NFO, or the instructor NFO, was in a jump seat behind that the student. And then we had Gray Eagles, so they were retirees who were pilots. Retired pilot, not a civilian pilot. Now these are fighter pilots who have found a way to be a fighter pilot without without the fighter plane. And then in the back, you'd have like the next guy who was going to be the student up front, and an empty seat for the flight doc. And so we had a repeat of the instruments that the student NFO had. So his radar, his thing. And they would do low-level routes, so 300 feet, 500 feet, 300 knots.
Yeah.
Bouncing around the southeastern United States. Occasionally, if I my stomach was feeling up to it, they would do practice intercepts. Mm-hmm. And of course, you're talking about people that they're still learning.
Right.
And so, I'm watching the radar display. I can see that the guy up front thinks that he wants to go up and to the right because that's what the dot says that he should do. Uh-huh. And invariably it's like down and to the left. No, I mean, come right. No, up. No, down. And the Gray Eagle pilot does within safety bounds precisely what the student tells him to do. Mm-hmm. So for the people in the back, and this is me all the time, you've got this tiny little window over on the side where you can maybe see the horizon occasionally, and the airplane's going all over the place as this guy's chasing the dot. So yeah, I've filled up a couple of bags
okay.
with that one.
Okay. Well, I'm not loaning you one of my Browns bags because it has holes in it. So, what have you learned in your life that you wish you could convey to people of the next generation, maybe your son's age, that maybe you've conveyed it to him, but everybody else his age, what would you like to convey to them that you think that they should know?
Yeah, so learning and whether this is trying to kick a football, or being an aerospace experimental psychologist or a pilot or anything about that, it's about engaging with the environment, and being good with making an error. Mm-hmm. Error-driven learning is a thing. That's, you kick the ball doesn't go anywhere near where you wanted it to, but you've sort of learned something about the way that it felt coming off of your foot and how you dropped it and where it went. Mm-hmm. And so, being comfortable with the idea that I'm new to this, I'm going to make an error, but I'm going to engage with the environment. I'm going to go for it. I think that is a general thing, that kicking a footy, learning a language, flying an airplane, having a conversation with a girl.
There you go. Okay. Couple more questions that aren't necessarily footy related here. You've just been given the task of hosting a music festival. What 3 artists or bands are performing at that festival? Who are you bringing in?
Okay, so unfortunately, I grew up in the Pacific Northwest during the early 90s, really, was my high school period. Okay. So I tend toward grunge. Now, unfortunately, many of these grunge artists are no longer with us, but so I guess I bring the Foo Fighters, I bring Pearl Jam. I don't know if what's left of Soundgarden is still doing anything.
Yeah, but, that's true. Yeah, with Mr. Cornell being gone. Yeah. That's not a bad show. That's not a bad show. I'm in February. I'm actually going to be going to see Volbeat up in Toledo.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. No, I've more recently like Rain Wolf and Highly Suspect and Royal Blood, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. We're also they're playing with Ghost.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is and I've shown my wife. We've been married 26 years now. I've shown her the picture. She's like, okay, you're gonna go see them. Whatever. Fine. I'll stick with Travis Tritt. Yeah.
Right.
So you're gonna sit down once your career is finished and you've decided to step away from the military and retire, and you decide to write your autobiography. What are you gonna call it?
Oh God. Man, so the being a Ph.D. and academic, I end up writing an awful lot of papers, and I think the secret to a title is that you don't write it until after you've written the book.
Okay.
Written the thing.
Okay.
So that would be, writing the title first is guaranteed a guaranteed fail.
Okay. Well, maybe that's the title there. I don't know. No, probably not. Probably not. Okay. Yeah. So anything else that related to footy that you think we should be addressing or into your career? I mean, you've been in about 17 years, you said?
Yes, I've been in the Navy for 17 years. One of the things that, again, I sort of got into footy because rugby was orthopedically brutal.
And that's an interesting phrase, because that's, it's...
Yeah.
Because, when you look at footy, I would imagine, because footy does have a bit of a history with concussions and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I would think somebody who's with your background is like, what am I doing here? Maybe just once in a blue moon. Have you had yourself a concussion here or there that you played that maybe you've recognized?
Yeah. So I've never had a concussion.
Okay.
I've broken fingers playing footy.
Mm-hmm.
I've taken some pretty good hits.
Okay.
For a little while there, that 6-year hiatus before I got back with the with the Tiger Sharks. That was initially prompted by taking a big hit and sort of sitting there and thinking, I'm getting paid to be a thinker,
right? Yeah.
And,
yes.
and if I'm doing this for this may be bad for business, but fundamentally, the Americans, the leading cause of death and premature death in the United States is heart disease. It's CTE is not a major cause of death amongst the population at this point.
Right.
So
that's a great point. Yes, despite Will Smith's film from a few years ago.
Right.
Yeah, which actually is one I'm using I teach a class called Contemporary History Through Film.
Okay.
That's one of the films that I actually use in the class.
Yeah. So it's one of the truisms is that people are miserable about assessing relative risk, and so I as a private pilot, I frequently have the conversations, particularly in Central Florida. I'd have these conversations like, "You fly airplanes, you're nuts," and like, "You drive on I-4, you're nuts." Making a conscious risk assessment.
Right.
And approaching it eyes wide open. Yeah, if you're playing footy, you are opening yourself up for a good bump, certainly. But at the same time, it's not. 3 yards in a cloud of dust is not a thing in footy. If that's your strategy, you're going to lose bad.
Yes, which but about 50 minutes from now is the start of the Ohio State-Michigan game, which...
Well, yeah, exactly so.
Hopefully finding it on the radio as I hop on the road today and listening to that, yeah.
Yeah, well, and so, along those lines, so rugby, a completely valid strategy is, to keep it in the scrum and the rolling maul, and, do these forward picks and drive it straight into the next guy and push them back that way, and that doesn't work in footy. And one of the things that is a consequence of that is that I think it is more sustainable. So I'm pushing 50. I'm not there yet, but I'm getting there fast.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I'm going to be radically broken.
Okay.
And so it's one of those things that I think I can continue to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, and as you mentioned, early on in our discussion, that you said you didn't feel as though you were built for rugby.
Yeah.
And rugby players and footy players are built different from one another.
Yeah.
It's two different skill sets.
Well, yeah, and it's you can think about it in a continuum from gridiron football out to footy, where in gridiron you've got a lot of very athletic people. But fundamentally, you run for 5 to 7 seconds, and then you come back and you have a committee meeting. Yes,
exactly. Yes,
yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that that really drew me to watching footy. It's a game that really doesn't stop. And I work as a public address announcer besides teaching, and I announce our high school soccer games, but I don't watch soccer beyond that because I joke with the players that to me that it's a communist sport because they don't let you use all your body parts.
Yeah.
Offsides, you're faster than the other guy. No, you have to be just the same speed as that person. Sorry, that's a penalty.
Yeah. Well, and it's I'm right there with you. I will say, like with footy, if you've not if you've not sat down and watched a game with somebody who kind of knows what's going on, there are some things that can be a little bit on the strange side.
Right.
The mark, when I was, I'd seen it on TV in the 80s, and you'd see this wonderful flowing set of play where guys are getting lit up left, right, and center and bumps, and then suddenly somebody kicks this long ball, it goes out to a guy, and there's nobody else in the picture, nobody around him, and somehow there's a foul because he's getting a free kick. It took me a while to figure out that. It's like, no, if you catch a clean ball, you get a free kick from that point. And so there are a few of those things, but yeah.
Well, I think we've covered just about everything here. Ladies and gents, I do want to thank you. I do want to thank Mr. Jeff Grubb from the RVA Lions and the United States Navy for stopping by to chat for this episode of the podcast. Sir, it was great to have you this morning. This was an absolute joy.
Absolutely, and thank you for having me on.
I truly appreciate it. I really enjoyed this. I'm like I said, I'm getting ready to go make about a 10-hour drive home into lake effect snow. So I'd rather stay here and chat all day long, but I'm not going to get myself any closer to home if I do that, because I've got to be back to work on Monday. So
yeah,
thanks again. This was absolutely wonderful.
And thank you.
You bet. I'd like to give a big thanks to Commander Jeff Grubb for stopping by the Delta Hotel in Norfolk, Virginia, so he and I could have this chat. I hope you enjoyed it. It was fascinating to talk to him about his job, and like I had said, it's a job that I didn't realize existed. And and this is from somebody who had worked kind of in the aviation community in the Navy for a few years, and I didn't know that he did this job or that it even was around. So it was a very compelling story. I loved hearing his talk about his love for the game of footy as well, and how it helped to level him out, to help make him whole, and to give him the opportunity away from his studies and his job as well. So again, a huge thanks to Commander Grubb. I truly appreciate it, sir. Like I said, I think you have the most interesting job that I have ever heard of. Now, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget that you can find everything related to the podcast at my new website at yankonthefooty.com. I hope you'll consider checking it out. You can leave me a voicemail there. You can share your views on an issue from a previous episode. You can shoot me a question there. You can also sign up for the mailing list there. If you'd like to help out the show, maybe you consider checking out that little yellow button in the bottom left-hand corner of my website, the Buy Me a Coffee page, if you want to help out the podcast that way. If you also want to check out some of my podcast gear, you can do that over on the Redbubble page. I just was over there not too long ago and made a few purchases for myself on the Redbubble page, so I'm really looking forward to getting those things in here very soon. Now, again, as I've mentioned in the last few episodes, I am looking for guests that are interested in talking about their club's off-season, whether that be in the AFLW or the AFL comps. If you're interested in doing that, go ahead and check out the Register as a Guest button at the top of the website there on the guest intake form. You can fill that out. I'll get back with you very soon to get you set up for that. Again, that's at the top of my website. You can check that out there at yankonthefooty.com. Now that you've listened, I hope you'll consider heading over to Apple Podcasts or to Podchaser or even on my website and leaving a 5-star review if you like the show. Remember, you can reach me at yankonthefooty@gmail.com, as well as at yank_on on Twitter and on Facebook and Instagram at @yankonthefooty. You can also find the podcast on my YouTube channel. Just search out my name, Craig Wessels. And again, if you haven't done so yet, I hope you'll consider signing up for the email list so I can get the podcast into your ears as soon as an episode comes out. Ladies and gents, I want to thank you for tuning into this episode. I want to thank you for listening. I truly appreciate you tuning in. We're fans of this game. We see the calendar flipping over to December, and that's soon going to be January when the women's comp gets started for this year. Although it was supposed to be starting in December, it got pushed back a little bit. Footy's almost back, and I'm excited. I know a lot of you are excited as well. I can't wait to see the first bounce and get things going again. We're fans of this game. It's a game we love. I want to thank you for tuning in. I hope you'll share the podcast with your friends and your family. And ladies and gentlemen, as always, may your dribble kick never ever hit that blasted post. I will catch you later. This has been episode 114 of A Yank on the Footy. Don't forget, you can reach me at yank_on Twitter or to yankonthefooty@gmail.com. You can also check out my website at yankonthefooty.com. Thanks for listening, and until next time, ladies and gents, goodbye.